Hi everyone, my name is Anvara Kumari and today we are here to talk about inaccessibility in websites and relation of JavaScript with it. Before we start, little bit of introduction about myself. My name is Anvara Kumari. I'm working as a development specialist at MediaOcean. I'm really passionate about JavaScript and accessibility. My Twitter handle is miracle_404. So if you would like to talk about anything from JavaScript accessibility to another technologies in general, you can reach out to me and I will be happy to help. What are we going to cover today? Today, we will start with a basic introduction of accessibility and dive into why it is important and some of the demos and examples of how JavaScript can make or break accessibility. The first and foremost question is what exactly is accessibility? Accessibility means making resources and services usable by everyone regardless of their ability or disability. Okay. Why do we care? Why is accessibility so important? To understand that, we must first understand why do we create websites or applications. We create them so that the users can use them. Now, if some of the features are not accessible by users, they cannot use them. So accessibility actually equals usability. If the user cannot use them, what is the motive of creating a website or application, right? As Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of web, has rightly told that the power of the web is in its universality and access by everyone regardless of disability is an essential aspect. If we think about accessibility, it's not a new concept. It has always been there since the beginning of web. World's first website is totally accessible. If we go ahead and check it out, this is the world's first website and I'm using one of the assistive technology, which is keyboard, and I can totally navigate through all the links using just my keyboard. So we do not really know about our user, that how they are going to use our website or what they could be going through when are using our website. So it is highly advisable that we should always keep it accessible. World Health Organization or WHO says that 15% of world's population lives with some kind of disability. Let's see through what are the different kind of disability which our users can be living with. Like there are different categories: permanent, temporary, and situational. To take an example of a sight disability, if a user is blind, it's a permanent disability. But another user might be having some infection in their eyes and they're still not able to see something, then it's called temporary disability. Then there could be a situation that our eyes are totally fine, but we are in a bright environment and we are not able to see what is on our screen. We are not able to navigate on our tablets or on mobile. Then this is called situational disability. Apart from that, there are people who have some cognitive or neurological condition. They face some difficulty in understanding the content, or they might feel uneasy when see animation or time sensitive content. Then there are users who might be facing some technical challenges, like they are accessing our websites on a slow internet connection or an older technology or on a smaller screen device. So is our website accessible for all of these kind of users? Also, there are certain issues with come with aging, like sight issues or motor disabilities and so on. There could also be a situation where our user is in panic mode or stress. So we made our website easily structured and navigable by such kind of users? We must always think about these things. So by now I might have convinced you to understand that, okay, accessibility is important and we must be thinking about accessibility when we are creating websites and applications. So you might ask, well, how do I start with accessibility? My first advice is that we must always think about user. We must think from user perspective, what the user needs or what is the issue we are trying to resolve. If we are thinking from user perspective, then we have already taken a big step toward accessibility. Apart from that, there are certain resources on internet which contain very good information about accessibility. We should go ahead and read it and see what we require. And there are official websites for W3C, and MDN also has a very good documentation on accessibility, and they have rules which suggest that if we are using a certain kind of component, how user can navigate through them and how we can make them more accessible. Normally, when we talk about accessibility, we always talk about HTML and CSS. We think about the rules through which we can make our websites more accessible. But today we are going to focus on JavaScript and see how writing good JavaScript can really make websites more accessible. We are going through some of the rules and we will see some examples of how we can create highly accessible websites. So the rule number 1 is using semantic HTML. Semantic HTML tags are the tags which have some meaning attached to them. They do not uh, affect the presentation of our website, but they contain the information which is used by the assistive technologies and which is used by the users who are suffering from some kind of disability, or normal users also sometimes. So we are going to see one classic example of div versus button. When we are trying to introduce interactivity within our website, button is one of the things which we use so that user can go ahead and trigger some action on it. But there are multiple ways to create a button. We can even use a div or span to create a button and make a look and feel at button, or we can create button, or we can use button, which is a semantic tag for interactivity. Let's go ahead and see what is the difference and how it can affect the accessibility. So before that, this is one of the websites which I have created to help spread awareness around accessibility, and it contains some of the basic examples now around accessibility. So let's go and check out the button example. For button, if we go ahead and see, these are the buttons, button 1 and button 3, which I have created using button semantic tag, but the second button is created using div. Now, as a mouse user, I can go ahead and click on any of them and it will work perfectly fine. But let's try to navigate it through our keyboard. Keyboard users use tab key to navigate through the interactive elements. So I will click on tab. I go to button 1, perfectly fine. Now I want to do something which can happen on click of button 2. So I will tab again because I want to go to button 2. I tab over it, but I cannot access button 2. I directly went to button 3. So by using a div tag, what I have done, that I have essentially blocked my keyboard users out of the flow. They cannot access my button, so they cannot trigger that action. They cannot perform the action. So it's not a good user experience, right? We have blocked the user what they came on our website to do. So to fix that, there are two options. The first one is obviously using a semantic button tag. But in case there is a situation where we are not using a semantic HTML, and we still can go ahead and add some code to make it more semantic. So how you can do that? Before that, let's see the example for that. So if you go through the accessible button example, I am tabbing on it and I can go ahead and tab, and now button 2 is focused, so user can go ahead and perform the action through keyboard as well. And so I am trying to click on it using keyboard and I'm able to do that too. So wow, we have just made it accessible for different kind of users and all users are happy. So how to do that? So first rule is using a tab index. Using tab index, what we do, we make any non-semantic HTML focusable. And then to make it interactable by our keyboard, we need to add an event listener to it. So in this case, we are using a key down event listener. So if we go ahead and see the code for it, it's the div, which is acting as a button. And I have provided a tab index of 0, role of button, because I want to let the screen readers and other assistive technologies know that, yeah, it's a button which they have encountered. Now what I do, I'm finding the button through get element by ID. We find out the button, and we still need to add event listener using click, because the action should happen when we are clicking on that button. Extra thing which we need to do now is that we need to add a key down event listener as well to that button, because this is required for keyboard accessibility. Now, key down will be fired every time user presses any key. So we need to check for the specific keys. So as per accessibility rules, user can either press space key or the enter key to trigger any action. So what I will do, I will check if the key pressed by user was space or enter. If yes, I'm going ahead and again doing the action which is supposed to be done on the click of that button. Apart from that, one more thing which we need to do is that we need to prevent the default behavior of the click of the event. So this is required because when you click on space, so when you press the space button, by default the screen scrolls. We want to prevent that action for the button. That's why we will use this prevent default to block that. So we just saw how using a semantic HTML tag you enhances accessibility, and if we don't want to use that, or in any case if we are using a non-semantic HTML, how by writing that extra extra JavaScript code, we have just enhanced the accessibility and it is now usable by any kind of user. So rule number 2 is all the functionality must be accessible through keyboard. We saw one of the examples here. So what are the interactions which user performs using keyboard? The first one, obviously navigating through the elements. We can trigger any action, submit any form, or you can exit any current component. So like if there is a popover on it and using just key press, I would like to exit that dialog or that model from that screen. One of the examples could be when we have any horizontal scroll or next or previous buttons on our website. In that case, we do want to add arrow key event handling so that the users who are using keyboard, they can press the arrow keys and they should be able to scroll or navigate through next and previous content on the website. The important keys that user presses are enter, spacebar, tab, and escape, and we must always remember the key values for it so that we can go ahead and add event listeners as and when required. This is a sample code of how we can add an event listener to any element of our website. Rule number 3 is the event listeners, which we just saw an example of. They should be device independent. What do we mean by that? So JavaScript has many event handlers. There are many like mouse up, mouse down, mouse over, key up, key down. So what do we want to do that whenever we want them to trigger any action, we must use key up or key down in place of mouse up and mouse down, because mouse up and mouse down are device dependent event listeners. So they will be only accessed through mouse. So if I have a button and I have attached a mouse up on it, then I can trigger it only using mouse. If I do want other users to access that trigger action or access that button and click over it, I should be adding the key up or key down event handlers in that case. Now, if there is any business requirement or any such condition where we really want to have mouse down and mouse up event for some of our elements, we must also include a complementary key up or key down event listener so that we are not blocking the assistive technology users out of our flow. Rule number 4 is managing focus. So we must manage the focus on our website. Well, what do we mean by focus? So focus is actually something called very, like, you know, it has a very bad reputation of seemingly ugly outline over the interactive elements. So if you see here in this button, there is this black outline, and if we're in dark mode, it has this white outline by default. And what happens in general that many designers suggest, or many developers also, we do not like this on our element by default. So what we do, we go ahead and hide it. And when we hide it, as a mouse user, we are still able to navigate perfectly fine. But when it comes to the users who rely only on keyboard for navigating through our elements, we have just blocked them out because they are not able to understand what is the current active element on their web page right now. So to understand this better, I have created some demos. So the first demo will be where what we are doing that I have hidden the outline, so which we normally do. So if you see, I'm using my mouse and I'm perfectly able to go anywhere on this website, and I know that where I am currently, and I can click on it and it will work. But now as a keyboard user, if I'm a keyboard user now and I will try to navigate it only through my keyboard, if you see the outline, it never comes on the web content. Okay, right? So I'm not able to access any of the links or buttons on this website. So it's a very bad user experience for keyboard users. So now normally what happens that we say this, we give this example, we preach about this, we think about it, and then we forget the next time again we might be doing the same thing. Unless we are in that situation where we are blocked due to such behavior. So one such behavior for a mouse user could be that the cursor is not there, right? So what I have done here now is effectively this content is totally accessible by our keyboard. So if you go ahead and see through keyboard, I'm able to access everything. But as a mouse user, so my cursor is there now, and now I want to perform something using my mouse. So if you see, the cursor is invisible now. Just like I hid outline in the previous example, I have just hidden cursor in this example, and I am not sure where I am on this web page, so I'm not able to do anything, right? So I highly suggest you to go through this small web example and see for yourself how frustrating it is if we do not understand where we are currently, so we cannot proceed to do the action which we came to do here, right? So it's highly frustrating. So it really helps us to understand that if we hide outline, or if we do not provide users with any measures to understand which is their current active element, how frustrating or it could be for the users, or it's such a bad user experience. So yeah, now what we're going to do, so this is one of my favorite quote. I read it somewhere and I really liked it. So outline is to keyboard users what cursor is to mouse users, and this is so true. This really relates so much. So what we are going to do today, we are going to see one of the use case where using JavaScript will really enhance the accessibility of our website. So that use case is modal interaction. So whenever we are having a dialogue on our website, how we can use JavaScript to make it highly accessible for any kind of user. So let's jump back again to the examples. We go back to our website and models. Here we are. So what I'm going to do, I'm directly going to use my keyboard to access to all of these, and so what is the behavior of an inaccessible website, and then how we can make it accessible. So I'm using my tab. I came on the button which is going to open my model. I enter on it, the model opened. But now if you notice one thing, the focus, which we just talked about, right? The focus is still on the back of the model. It's still on the view, which is now not active. Model is active now, but the focus is in back of it. So the user wanted the focus shifted to the model, which clearly didn't happen. That's okay. I click on tab again, still the focus is not come here. So it's confusing to the user. However, if the user clicks on tab 2-3 times, it will come after the flow of interactive elements reaches the model, it will still come to the model. Now the focus is there on the model, and we can perform any action. What I want to do, maybe there was a form or something, I want to go ahead and submit. But let's say I'm tabbing here, and by mistake, I tabbed one more time. So the normal behavior or the accessibility rule, it says that the focus must be trapped into the active container right now, the active model which is there. The focus should have been in this model itself. It should not have moved out. But what happened right now, that the focus moved out of this model and went again back to the model. So this again confuses the users. However, I can use shift tab again and I can come back to this model. Now the third rule says that whenever if a model has opened, or if we have a close icon or something like that, the user must be able to close that model using keyboard. Yeah, using escape button on keyboard. So I try to click on escape, but the model will not close. I have to go back to the cross icon and that button, and then I can click either enter or space, and now the model has closed. So we see that user has to perform some extra steps, and there were some steps which really confused the users, and we are not clearly following all the rules of accessibility while creating this model. So let's see how accessible model should behave. So if you go to the third button, click here to open model, this is going to open accessible model. Let's see. I click enter on it. And if you see, the model is opened and the focus came right to the first interactive element in this model, which means that user now knows that, okay, we are in the model, focus is in the model, and I can go ahead and perform any action. Now I am pressing tab. It came to the last interactive element of model. I pressed tab again, and it went back to the first interactive element on the model. So this is called focus trapping. Whenever the user presses tab or shift tab, the focus must be trapped in this model itself, and it should never go behind the model. So now the third rule again, that a user must be able to close this model using the escape press. I'm pressing the key escape, and yes, it closed. So it's good. Now, one more thing which has happened, that the focus went right back to the same button from where the user has started. So the context has not been lost for the user. They know that, okay, I had started from here, I went to the model, I did something, and now I'm back at this button. I can proceed now. So this is an example of a good accessible model which we can create, and let's see how we can achieve these functionalities using JavaScript. So in the example section below, in the sample code, we have in HTML, we have a button which is going to open the model, and there is a div which contains all the model content. And if you see, I've provided it a role of dialogue because we want to let the assistive technologies know that this content is going to be a dialogue. Let's jump to JavaScript section. In JavaScript, we have used some of the query selectors to get our model, to get our different interactions on the model, as well as the button which is going to open our model. Now, let's say what happens when we click on the open model button. So as soon as we click on the open model button, three things are happening here. The first thing is we have a variable which stores the previous active element, and what we do, that we save the current active element of document, which was that button which opens the model, right? So we store that into this previous active element. After we have stored it, we toggle it. It means that we are now putting the model in front. We are making it visible. After that, what we do, the third thing which we do, that we go through all the focusable elements of the model. If you see here, what we are doing, we are query selecting into the model, and for my scenario, I only had buttons on the model. So I will go ahead and check how many buttons I have, and I select the first one and put the focus on it. So I say that, hey, by default, when the model opens, you have to focus on the first interactive element, which is the cross icon for us, right? Now, when we close the model using either close button or the submit button, what we are doing here, that we are toggling the model with focus restored. What does this mean is that first we toggle the model to now disappear. We want it to hide. So we hide it through this. And then if you remember that when we were opening the model, we had saved the reference of the button into this variable. What we do now essentially is we go ahead and focus on it. So now that button is focused when the model closes due to this line of code. Apart from that, there is also code of trapping the focus inside a model where we are checking on the key down. So it is attached to key down event, and we are checking if the user is pressing tab, and then we see if the combination is shift tab or normal tab, and according to that, we go ahead and focus the elements. Then there is one more code for escape listener. So if the user will press the escape key, what will happen, that we are again going to hide the model and restore the focus back to the button from where the model got opened. So, and the reference for this is also there. In case you are interested, you can go explore it further. So yeah, then the rule number 5, this is our last rule for today. We should be honoring the user's device settings. So we are going to see a use case of animations. Normally what happens that animations, this is not like against using animation. We can use animations for all we want. Animations really make our websites beautiful and attractive, but there are some of the users who have a certain conditions that they feel uneasy when they see animation or the flashing content on their screen. So there is this settings in every operating system or in every device where we can go ahead and set if we want to see animation or not. So if you, for Windows, what it is that if you type animation, and we get a setting right here, and in the setting by default it's on. So this means that okay, I want to see any animations which occur in any of our websites which I am accessing. So let's see an example of how it will affect. So this is the example for animation. So if you see now, for now, I don't have any preference. What I want that, okay, if animations are there, I should be able to see, and that's fine, right? We are able to see the animations on our screen. Now, let's say I do not want to see the animation. So my device setting says that, okay, turn off the animations on any content which I see on my Windows machine. So if I refresh again, if you see, okay, it takes a while maybe. Yes. So if you see now that this animation has stopped. So we have written a code to honor device settings of users. So animation is stopped right now, it's still. So user will not face any kind of issues. But in this example, this is still going on. The animation is still going on. So this is not a very good user experience. So let's see how we can achieve this through our code. There are two ways of doing that. We can achieve it using CSS. In CSS, we have a media query which says prefers reduce motion. So if the user will not have any preference, what we do inside that media query, we can go ahead and write all our code of animation. So the styling which will attach the animation to any element on our web page, that can go inside this media query. So what this will do, that if user will have any kind of preference, this code is not gonna run and this CSS is not gonna get applied to our website. If we want to use JavaScript, in JavaScript, we have a match media API, and we can check for, again, the same media query, prefers reduce motion. So this is going to return true if user has set his device settings, set their device settings to say that, hey, I do not want to see any animation. In that case, what we will do, we are not going to apply any classes, but if user has no such settings, we will go ahead and apply this class whichever we want, and it contains all the animation code for us. So using preferred reduce motion media query, we can really used to detect the device settings of users, and we can help them in getting the more accessible content. So we are done with the rules, and now I have listed down some tools and extensions which we can use to see how accessible our websites really are. So these are some of the dev tools, extensions which we can really use, and browser extensions which we can use to test our website accessibility. I will go and quickly run you through these. So first and foremost things which we already have in our dev tools is the accessibility pane. So what accessibility pane does, that you can go ahead and select any element on your screen and see what is the accessibility information for it. So I select it and I go to the accessibility pane, and if you see, there are many accessibility information here, and also the tree of accessibility. This is how the assistive technologies read our element on our web page. So we can go ahead and see it to see if there are any accessibility issues with our websites. There is another one which is called Lighthouse. In Lighthouse, what we can do that we can select accessibility, we can select the device for which we want to see, and we can generate the report for it. It generates an audit report for the accessibility of our current web page, and it gives you information on what is accessible, what is not, a score for accessibility, and how you can fix something which is not accessible. In my case, there is one accessibility issue, and it's going to tell me that how I can fix it. Also, some things which we can manually check on our website to see if they are still working or not. And on this actually works, and there is one more which is called Axe. So Axe is also a extension which we need to add from browser extensions. This is extension, and it also gets added to the DevTools itself. Here, Axe, it works similar to the Lighthouse. Then we have Wave, which is an extension of browser. So this is Wave extension. For that, what we need to do, right click and wave this page. So when I wave this page, what it will do, it is going to give me all the accessibility information of this page, and it has very detailed information. Personally, I really like it a lot. And you can go ahead and check about all the elements, their information and what they do. This is really helpful. So I recommend you to go ahead and check out these tools and see how your website is doing in terms of accessibility, and fix if possible. And these are for the testing, for testing our websites. But now I really believe that we should be thinking about accessibility from the very start. So there are some tools which help us detect accessibility at development phase itself. So web accessibility and web hint are some of the IDE extensions. So I have added them in my VS Code extension, and I just wanted to show you how they help us detect accessibility issues during the development phase itself. So I have the extensions installed in my VS Code, and if you see, I'm trying to add a click handler on a div. So it detects that, okay, there is a click handler, and it's going to tell me that we should at least specify a role for it so that the assistive users understand about these things. And then I have another one, which is an image, and it does not have an alt. And alt is really important for accessibility. So it's going to go ahead and tell me that, hey, you should add an alt for it. And it gives a very good information. And so what these tools do, that they really help when I'm typing, when I'm coding, so that I do not write any inaccessible code by mistake. Although the support which they have is really limited, but still it really helps in some of the major rules of HTML. So it helps a lot in preventing the inaccessible code getting shipped to the production. Also, there are different plugins like this one, ESLint plugin for JSX. What it does, that it's obviously for JSX code, as the name suggests, it's a ESLint plugin, and we can configure it. And whenever we are coding in JSX, it will give us good information of what is the accessibility of our current code which we are writing. So to conclude, we must always consider the users with wide range of abilities and technologies when we are coding or when we are creating an application or website. Always use proper semantic HTML wherever possible, or remember to add that extra code so that it's accessible for everyone. We must always manage the focus and keyboard interactivity of the elements on our web pages or applications, and always focus on accessibility, just like we focus on everything else on our web page, websites, applications. So always code with accessibility in mind. These are some of the resources which I took reference from when I was creating this talk, or it also contains the website which I used to demo and some CodePen links which I've used in the presentation. So I will be sharing this slide after the talk. You can go through all the links and explore yourself. So I also have an action item for you today. If you have learned anything from this talk, I highly encourage you to pass on that learning. Go ahead and talk with someone or your teammate or a friend you are working with, and you can discuss about accessibility. And this is something that we need really everyone to be highly aware of. So let's all spread this light of awareness, and so that the world is highly accessible place for everyone. Let's all work toward a more inclusive world. Keep learning, everyone. Stay safe, and thanks a lot. Any questions? I'm open to questions now.